Welcome back to Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Prowler only. Last time we took on Nakarkos in G rank, and this time we'll be taking on our favorite Rathalos and Rathian pair in their hyper versions. Not the gold and silver versions, just the regular hyper red and green versions at the very least. Now we've got our dragon weapon equipped, which I'm sure you're probably pretty aware that's the best element for it. So we'll go ahead and take the Rathian quest first, and we'll head on out. All right, Hyper Rathian. Now, I'm sure you can expect this isn't going to be anything too special. We've already fought both the gold and silver versions of both of these monsters, and the deviant versions have also been completed as well. So don't get your hopes up for anything too fancy. Not that I've really, hyped it up or anything, because they're just, a bit tankier, have maybe a couple more moves, and they move a bit faster sometimes. Interesting thing when I was looking over the hit zones is that the back on both Rathalos and Rathian take 15 fire damage, which is odd considering they're fire monsters, kind of. Obviously they shoot fire. They're not like, made of lava or anything like a Lavasiath, which has it running through its veins, something like that. But it does take 15 on the back, which is weird. Obviously you're not using that at all, unless for whatever reason the best raw weapon you have has fire element on it, and even then you're not going for the back, you're going for that 90 hit zone value on the head. Like pretty much every weapon, hammer or blunt weapons at the very least, and shot damage type have slightly less at 80 for blunt and then 70 for shot type, but still that's the best. So it's not only that, but also it's not that hard to reach. So you don't have the incentive to go for the stomach, which would be the second best if you can't reach the face, because the face is actually lower than the stomach. So I do believe the cutting type weapons actually have a better hit zone also on the stomach compared to the other types, but it's not really enough of a difference really to matter. At 90, it's 90 to 80 is not that. It's 10% less damage, which may seem like much, but especially if you're getting KOs or something, you're going to be just fine. And obviously, since it's a hyper monster, we get the 14% damage increase for raw at the very least. It may also be an element for getting these things on the hyper spots. So if there is a spot that's normally not a weak spot, but it has a hyper spot, it may actually be a weak spot. It's got to be pretty close to actually being a weak spot normally, but like the tail, I'd say is probably a lot more easy to take off than the standard part would be on the standard Rathian. Obviously, it's not that hard to take off on a standard Rathian either, but it's easier here, and the wing breaks are also easier, so if you want to focus those in the air to get a toppler or something, that is something you can go for. But she's just kind of doing normal Rathian things, nothing too special. Here comes a sweep. I don't know if she can do the sideways sweep. That may just be a gold Rathian thing in G rank, and she may be able to, I'm not sure. But, I mean, you saw there where she just kind of did it forwards. We'll wait this one out. Dodge to the right. Throw this out. She lands. We don't get affected by the wind press. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out. I think I have enough time to get it before she actually starts the attack, especially because she had to head turn. There's the sideways sweep. That's not really the one I was talking about. It was the one that led her into the air. That one doesn't. It just kind of has her doing it a little bit forward after a flame bite. Now that is something she does share with Gold Rathian. So if you are well versed in the Gold Rathian moveset, that is something you probably know how to avoid at the very least. To tackle, she'll do it a third time probably. Just kind of standard low rank Rathian moveset there. When she's enraged, she likes to do what they call the lawnmower, where she just likes to run and turn and run and turn, which she doesn't, normally do that when she's not enraged, so it does catch you off guard. And if you keep, trying to just walk out of the way and then attack her immediately after finishing the first or second one, you'll be hit by the third one if you overcommit to something. Now, if you're using sword and shield or something, you should be fine, but it is really important to, stay away from that face hit box. Especially if you're a smaller character like the cats are, which don't get as much distance when walking. Alright, here comes a big fireball, and you want to make sure you take note of the difference between that and the triple. I think this is the triple. Never mind, it's not the triple. That is very similar to Gold Rathian as well. And I think I got a face break already, which, again, isn't surprising at a 90 hit zone value, but the triple fireball is just a very safe option for your Mega Boomerang. Again, it's not any different at all from high rank or low rank Rathian. All of your openings are going to be the same, though she is slightly faster, I think, in just her general animations. it's not enough to the point where you can't really get anything out. You'll be perfectly fine just being able to attack. And I want to say, I don't think the attacks themselves are necessarily that much faster. It's just the interval in between attacks. Like here, she immediately moves. I think in low rank, they move a bit slower in between attacks and with their cooldowns and whatnot. It's up in the air, probably going to do a flip. I think I'm going to try this. Yes, that should actually end very well since she has to hit turn. We'll be hit by a tackle, but we're not taking that much damage anyway, so it's not that bad. We're getting out a lot more damage than she's dealing to us when we trade like that, so it's fine, and our cats will heal us anyways. Now, whenever she does the roar like this, she'll jump into the air, always. Unless it's like the first time you don't run into the area or something like that. It's just whenever she goes in rage, you can always guaranteed get a Mega Boomerang out. It's a lot sketchier with the Deviant and the faster versions of the monster like Gold Rathian, but even there, it's still possible. It's just hoping that, number one, you have earplugs. If you don't have earplugs, it's still possible. It's just a bit tighter, obviously, since you have to dodge the roar and then get out of it and throw the Mega Boomerang in time. And especially with your positioning, you may not have a great opportunity to hit a good weak spot, depending on if you're on the back or something. Especially with Gold, where her tail isn't a weak spot, it's actually a hard spot. So you may have to pierce through that to actually get a good spot. But the back is actually a pretty good hit zone, I believe, on Gold. So even if you're piercing through the tail, you can reach the back pretty quickly doing that. And sometimes, again, since she's in the air, you can just kind of forego the tail hitbox and just go straight to the back. But kind of like that, piercing through the wings with the wings are okay as well. So that's not a bad game plan if you are fighting them. All right, here comes the running flip. Go ahead and throw a couple here. I'm going to dodge to the right, make her head turn. Here we go, she's going back into the air. And she'll go into the air a decent amount. It's not as bad as Rathalos because she doesn't just stay there. Obviously, we get the privilege of being able to attack in the air as always. So, you know, Blade Master weapons are going to be a little bit more annoyed. And I'm actually quite surprised that hit me. Not really that surprised, but I didn't think it would. I'll say it that way. All right, get hit by the tackle. She's going to do another one. And probably a third one. I'm just going to go ahead and Soothing Roll, get rid of the burn. Wait for her to finish this. And there may be enough time at the end of that little bite there to get a Mega Boomerang off too. It just depends. Like, obviously, if she's doing her little lawnmower attack like this, then you can for sure predict the third one and start a Mega Boomerang there. And again, on these simpler fights, it's definitely more or less a, can I get a Mega Boomerang off here or not? Because the more you get out, obviously, the faster the hunt's just going to go naturally, as long as you have enough gauge for it. And since she's a hyper monster, you should be having plenty of gauge. All right, just gonna fly back into the air now. Go ahead and snipe her like this. Try to hit the face, pierce the back, get a knockdown. I'm just gonna go for the face again. I'm gonna bother trying to pierce through the belly, hitting that. Doesn't really stay on the ground for long, which is fairly normal for flying monsters. But you will be getting a lot more topples because you can topple them in the air, unlike most land-based monsters, which, you know, can't fly, obviously. There are some, you know, niche situations I've talked about before where, like, Zenogre is jumping and you can knock him out of the air, things like that. I think you can even do that in World. And maybe Rise. I don't think I've seen it in Rise, though, but it is actually kind of an interesting thing seeing you be able to actually stop this hurtling creature that weighs a very large amount right in the air and just kind of defy the laws of physics to make it fall on the ground. But it is free damage, so I'm going to complain. All right, that looked like a triple, but we got the clinch, which is good. And this should not take very long at all. I don't remember how much health she does have, but it's a Rathian. Even with a bunch of health bloat, she's still simple enough to where you're going to be able to exploit a lot of her weaknesses fairly easily. All right, another 2 areas later, got her to limp. She's going to run to this area. I'm not even going to bother letting her sleep. No real purpose to it, because she's probably just going to go down pretty quickly anyways. And obviously, we can't make much use out of sleep hits other than getting a Mega Boomerang off, but since the area was actually so close, and this is just kind of a decision-making thing, if the area is close enough, you should be able to get a free Mega Boomerang off. Especially if they're a flying monster, they kind of have to do that slow descent. They will still take damage there. Now, obviously, the same rules apply with a monster that's digging or, you know, in a weird special animation. If they get down to 1 HP, you can't knock them out of it completely until they get to a point where you actually can kill them, and then you'll still have to do that extra 1 HP of damage, which obviously doesn't matter. But, you know, if you do technically knock them out, or, you know, kill them while they're flying or entering a zone or something like that, you'll still have to finish them off. You can't just cheese them that way. I say cheese them, you know, you're still getting the most out of the cheese other than 1 hit point of damage, so it really doesn't matter that much. I assume the game just maybe freaks out whenever a monster dies in an area that it necessarily can't. And I would assume probably so that you can get the carves, you know, that way you don't just like kill a monster outside of the area that you can reach. However, especially in the older games, I have seen that happen before where like a tail or something has fallen out of bounds and it's just like, well, I guess I don't get a tail for this run, which I think they have done better in the newer games, and newer as in like Gen 3 and later, of not allowing that to happen, but I'm sure it can probably still happen in some very weird scenarios. Either way, not really much to talk about with her. You know, it's just a Rathian, souped up Rathian. Either way, cover her up and I'll meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub. We're obviously going to keep the same weapon equipped because the duo really just do not like dragon damage. I do actually find it interesting that it's dragon. Not really. I kind of get it. I don't understand dragon lore in this game. I don't really seek it out either. But let's get Igneous is the quest we're taking on. Has us hunting a hyper Rathalos in the volcano. Go ahead and take the quest and head on out. All right, here's our buddy. This is probably, I don't know, these two areas here where you fight Lavosiot, they're probably my least favorite part of the volcano. The other parts of it are more like a cozy thing, and this is kind of a cozy area, I guess, too. Just kind of makes me think of like a warm room or something like that, which, you know, obviously, because it's covered in lava. But I don't know, it's just kind of dreary, this particular part. The other parts are, you know, fine with me, but it does kind of make me not want to fight him on this map. I want to say there's another quest with him. Maybe, no, and I'm thinking of the regular Rathalos quest, but there may be another one where you fight him somewhere else that isn't just a multi-quest with different monsters as well. I do like fighting him on the deserted island because the theme music's so good. And I do like the theme music for this. I guess don't really like it particularly as much for Rathalos. It's still fine theme music, right? I'm not going to nitpick that much. But there are certainly other areas I'd rather fight him, like Ruined Pinnacle. Obviously love the music's so good there. The map itself is a bit vertically oriented, but it's still a fun map. You know, it's not terrible. Jurassic Frontier is also really nice. They did a really good job with the maps that they added in this game. Yes, there are some stinkers from 4 and 4 Ultimate that are very heavily skewed in the verticality angle. I think Ruined Pinnacle is a good balance of having some verticality, but not like so much to where you're climbing up half of the zone just to get to the monster, and then when they jump down you have to like jump so far down. You know, there is a balance there. You can't have too much verticality, and while I don't necessarily I'm not even gonna say it like that. Flat maps are okay, right? That's the norm. That's the standard. Verdant hills, which, you know, even then that has some verticality there too with the little ledges and stuff that you do have. You just don't want too much of it, you know? Obviously, you don't want all flat maps all of the time because then there's no variety at all. But at the same time, you know, flat maps just kind of do their thing. They rely on the monster kind of to carry, and a lot of times the monster can do that. The monsters are just really good in this game. Now sometimes you get some bad monsters like Aragon, but a lot of times you end up fighting those types of monsters in some pretty not great environments either, like the volcanic hollow, I think is what it's called. It's Sunken Hollow in 4 whenever it's not lavafied, but we don't have the non-lava version. His little piercing talons. He's not aiming at me, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out here. But yeah, Aragon in the volcanic hollow is just not a fun time. And then when you get Crystal Beard in there, it's even worse. And also the hyper version of Aragon, which I think you fight there. Could be wrong on that. Hopefully I am wrong on that. We don't have to fight him there, but I'd say probably out of the maps in the game, that's my least favorite. And I do definitely think that's a very common sentiment about that map. It is just so much verticality. It takes so long to get in between particular zones. Like going down it is one thing, obviously, because it's a vertical map, so going down it's not as bad as going up it, but going up just takes so long to get to anywhere. that it does just end up being a little sluggish. And especially with the volcanic design, you know, you can have really good volcanic designs, and sometimes, like I said about this area here, it can just feel a little drab and dreary and down. And sometimes that's good, you know, you want that to fit the atmosphere, but sometimes it can feel like a little much, like you're in this tunnel with no light at the end of it, and it's just like, ugh, I want to be done with this so fast. And a lot of times the monsters you fight there are not glass cannons, they are more likely to be the tanky monsters. Gravios, like I said, Uragon, trying to think of some others, but you know, Agnactor, he is a tanky monster. Even though he can heat his body up and be less tanky, he still has that tanky ability. You know, it just does kind of have those bad connotations with it because of the monsters you fight there as well. But on to our actual topic, Rathalos here, which, you know, since we were right next to the zone he moved to, we actually get a free Mega Boomerang off, like I was talking about last time. Break the wing. I wasn't really wanting to do that. I should have aimed that at his face. I should have known he was doing a idle animation. I don't think I actually should have known that. I think that was just kind of a random thing he did, but I had plenty of time to throw it at his face. I think I was just hoping he would do a head turn towards me and it would pierce the face, because I would have liked to have saved that wing break for an actual topple in the air, like for here. Should be able to dodge to the right, be safe from the fireball, and then be able to throw this out. And normally earplugs aren't like, you know, the most recommended thing on hunters, maybe unless you're doing like a greatsword build or something like that. But I do feel for cats, they are pretty valuable, and they're not taking up as much commitment of your skills as it would for a hunter. You have to get at the very least a level 10 in earplugs just to get low grade earplugs, and then high grade earplugs you have to add an extra 5 to it. Here we just throw in 2, which, yes, we have limited, you know, skill slots, 8. So it won't always be good, and you know, a lot of times it's completely worthless if the monster doesn't roar, or if it has a very easy tellable roar that you can very easily just dodge out of and then get a Mega Boomerang off. However, in these particular fights, and especially in the duel fights with monsters in arenas, it's really important to not be just stun locked by monsters roaring at each other. And that also allows you to be able to get Mega Boomerangs off, especially on the faster monsters where you have tighter windows if you do have to dodge the roar and throw it out. And, you know, obviously just in general, if you start a Mega Boomerang after an attack that they do, and instead of doing a head turn, they just roar in place, you don't just lose your Mega Boomerang. You know, it's not as set in stone as it would be for hunters where they don't use it that often. It definitely has its uses to where you can actually DPS with it. And especially on cats without adept dodges, you know, you're either choosing between earplugs for avoiding roars or Artful Dodger, because your dodge is so weird that you can only really dodge through a few of the roars naturally with your base iframes. So if you are trying to avoid them, you can either do the weird jump tech, which isn't the most consistent, or, you know, just slap on some earplugs or Artful Dodge and try to iframe through it. Probably should have thrown Mega Boomerang there, but it's okay. I'm rambling a bit, so I'm not gonna notice most things. I think this will be fine. Yeah, it should be able to hit the Bullfingo. Never mind, it pierced through the Bullfingo. I wonder if my Mega Boomerang killed the Bullfingo, and that's what allowed the fireball to go through. I don't think so. I think it just kind of phased through it. It's always a weird toss-up whether or not a monster's projectile will actually collide with something. It can, and it will a lot of the times, but not always. So you can't always just rely on it, but at that point, you know, it was too late for me anyway, before I even noticed the Bullfingo. So if it had happened and I hadn't gotten hit, it would have been fine, but at the same time, we're not taking that much damage, and we get healed pretty quickly anyways, so not the end of the world. Keep moving around here. And you can also go for the legs here if you want an extra topple. The legs aren't terrible. However, the head is just such a good hit zone. I don't ever really see the need to go for the legs, especially since I'm not a Blade Master, so I can't just aim up at it. Well, I got pinned, surprisingly, but it's not really the end of the world. Again, it's not like a Deviant where they're just chewing through half of your health whenever you do get pinned, so you just kind of get to ignore that. Or the worst offender of pinning, Savage Devil Joe, where you just kind of are losing so much progress on the fight if you do get pinned. So much HP gets restored when he does that. I do believe you do, you know, have to lose some HP that you dealt here. whenever you do get pinned, but it's not anywhere near as much, and you're going to chew through it pretty quickly anyways. So that's fine. And surprisingly, he does have a lot of just standard melee attacks. I think I'm safe here for the fireball. I think, yeah, I'm fine. I know Rathalos is generally notorious for just kind of staying in the air, but again, like I was saying before, it's not really a detriment to us because we can just kind of shoot at him. If we hit the wings, which aren't, you know, the best at zone, we still have the chance to get a stagger anyways. So, I don't know. It's not that bad for us, I'll say that much. The most annoying thing, I guess, would be just having to aim constantly upwards, but that's kind of part of it. Like, that's a very large nitpick at best. This was very greedy. I think I'm going to be fine anyways because he did that. And maybe we'll get a flinch as it comes back around. Nah, a little too over the head there, unfortunately, but that's a-okay. And turn, dodge to the right. Now, he can't do the lawnmower attack, so after he does a single tackle, you should be fine for the most part. And I'm going to shoot these off in the complete wrong direction. Throw this here. Do another fireball. That one does hit. As per usual, remember, if it's afflicted with hyper, the projectile is most likely going to be larger than, you know, obviously if it doesn't. Like, that's a pretty big fireball there, but if it isn't charged up, then you're able to play in a lot tighter margins. However, you still want to stay out of the range of the wind press, which is the probably most likely thing you're getting hit by, if anything, by this monster, if you're playing safe at the very least. All right, once again, couple areas later, Andy's limping to his nest. I took a little long to get over here, so I'll have to take Fireball as punishment, but that's okay. I've got enough gauge here. Really didn't get too many Mega Boomerangs off, especially compared to Rathian, but it's fine. Again, they take so much raw and dragon damage that the main weapons playstyle can just naturally deal a lot to it. Like, you can get a sub 10 with some pretty good play against standard Rathalos, you know, if you're really pushing it to the limit on what you're actually doing. But, you know, standard Rathalos obviously isn't the most tanky thing in the world either. He has his weaknesses, and obviously if you use flash bombs as well, he's going to go down pretty quickly if you have flash bomb bay with you, which is something you can use. I just didn't see really a need to use it here because he's not that bad in the air. You know, something like silver or gold, those are worse, and those I would actually, you know, especially when they're together, slightly recommend bringing it if you have it and it's not going to, you know, throw off your playstyle too much. Like, if you're trying to play it safe, I'd really just highly recommend using Go Fight Wind and having that for free heals. But if you're really wanting to try to make sure that they're not just both constantly spamming you in the air, that is a way to kind of get at the very least one off of you, if not both of them. Meanwhile here, you know, yeah, we can knock him out of the air with it, and that will give us a chance for a Mega Boomerang. However, a lot of his attacks naturally will just give us an option for a Mega Boomerang if we want to use it. And even then, we're still doing fine enough damage to him, and we can hit a lot of these weak spots in the air anyways. So I don't really see the need for it, especially in these single monster hunts. Either way, I'll go ahead and cover him up and meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub. Let's look at those weapons. I think these are a little bit more promising than the ones we have been looking at, but they're still not particularly amazing. First one is the Rathalos Blade Cross R, 189 melee attack with 42 fire element, white sharpness, no negative affinity. That's pretty good. That is not bad. So certainly a usable option. Obviously, you can probably find some better wins without having to fight a hyper monster. However, not bad, really, for the close range side. Now, obviously, since it's a close range weapon, the boomerang side is going to be worse. Only 171 with 16. I do believe the regular Agnector weapon is going to be better than that, if I can find it real quick. Yeah, 195 and 28. That's just so good. High raw, okay fire element, white sharpness. You're using this for your boomerang side, if anything. Next up is the Rathian Rapier Cross R, 195 attack with 10 poison on the boomerang side, and then 195 with 10 on the melee side as well. No negative affinity. It's okay. Obviously, you're not going to be getting a lot of poison procs with this, but 195 is not terrible with neutral affinity and white sharpness. Obviously, it's not setting any records. Obviously, it's not coming close to setting any records. It's not even coming close to any other weapons. I wouldn't even say it's a side grade for anything. But for what it is, It's okay, not the worst thing in the world. As for the armor, we have the Rathalos Helm Cross R with 152 defense, 10 fire resistance, and -10 dragon resistance are the standout. So obviously not using this against a dragon monster, which makes sense because it's Rathalos gear, and most likely going to be very similar with Rathian. Yep, exactly the same except for slightly less on the secondary resistances and then less on the raw resistance as well. So I don't see you using this, but it's there if you like the design. However, you can just use the standard one if you just want to transmog it. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a comment below and maybe even consider subscribing. Until next time, bye.